Have you ever thought about what might be hidden, like literally buried beneath a perfectly normal-looking city? Some dark secrets, maybe? Well, today, that's exactly what we're digging into. We are taking a really deep dive into some pretty grim lore. It's called The Alchemist's Shadow, Krat's Frozen Secrets, and it's from the game Lies of P. Overture. Yeah, prepare yourself for a chilling exploration.
Absolutely. What we want to do is really dissect some key parts of this source material. We'll explore what it tells us about this frozen, abandoned research complex and about this desperate hunt for a cure, and maybe most importantly, the chilling, really tragic results when scientific ambition goes completely off the rails. We're essentially piecing together this whole awful story, the alchemists, this petrification disease, and how Krat ended up totally isolated.
Okay, so let's set the scene. Picture this vast, frozen, derelict research facility hidden way down, deep under the city of Krat, the Zielter underground facility. When you look at the source material, what was this place actually for?
Right. So what the documents suggest is that it really had two pretty sinister purposes going on. First, it was definitely the secret lab.
Hmm.
This is where the alchemists were doing their clandestine experiments, all tied up with ergo.
Ergo being that sort of mysterious energy source in Krat.
Exactly, that potent life force stuff. So experiments with ergo and also directly linked to the petrification disease itself. But then, crucially, as the outbreak got worse, Zielter also became, well, a containment zone.
Containment zone.
Yeah. And the city council, the big players, the old families, the established elite who bankrolled a lot of crass progress, they were directly involved. They were quarantining victims down there, basically sealing them off from everyone else.
Wow. And the source material, it really paints a grim picture, doesn't it? You find things like interrogation logs, these instructions covered in frost. It all hints at pretty brutal methods, right? And
Hmm.
the items you pick up there, antifreeze ampoules, purification ampoules, even big ergo chunks, they almost scream desperation.
Hmm.
What do those finds tell us about their attempts to fix things, these purification attempts that obviously failed?
Oh, they're huge clues, tangible proof of just how desperate things got. The antifreeze ampoules, they suggest extreme cold was involved, probably to try and slow the disease, maybe, turning containment into this awful, frozen holding pattern.
Like cryostasis almost.
Sort of, yeah, a grim version of it. And the purification ampoules, well, that's obvious. They were trying constantly to find a way to cleanse or reverse the petrification
Oh.
and failing. And those big ergo chunks, that's the real kicker. It's a reminder that the very thing causing the disease was probably being used in massive amounts down there, maybe even as part of their so-called cures.
Which is terrifying. But okay, the horror didn't just stop at containment in Zieltor. Deeper inside, there was this specific section, the Elixir Research Zone. This was supposedly where they were testing the cure. So what exactly was this elixir, and what were they promising people?
So the elixir, as it's defined, was supposed to be a purified dose of ergo. The idea, initially at least, was that this refined form could actually cure the petrification disease. But, like you said, it gets more complicated. You also find these odd items. Goddard's art supplies, a genius master's pocket watch. These are described as recollections, things you can exchange. Finding stuff like that, seemingly personal items in a place like this, what does that suggest? About the elixir, or maybe about who was actually involved?
That's a really interesting point. It makes it sound less like just these cold monolithic alchemists doing everything. Maybe there were, I don't know, civilian researchers
Right.
or even scientists who didn't fully agree, caught up in it all. It definitely hints the whole operation wasn't maybe as uniform as it first seems.
Exactly. It suggests a more complex picture, maybe even some internal conflict, perhaps. And this is where it gets truly chilling, because these experiments didn't just fail to cure, they actively created the next nightmare. Despite the elixir's supposed purpose, the source material makes it clear. This area is ground zero for puppet experimentation, horrifying mutations, and this direct binding of humans and ergo.
Wait, so the carcass creatures, those mutated horrors.
They were the patients. They weren't some separate problem. They were the result of the attempted cure. The elixir, meant to save them, birthed these monsters instead. It's just profoundly tragic irony, isn't it?
Absolutely horrific. Okay, so we've seen the awful results, the carcasses, the sealed-off zones. Let's unpack the alchemists themselves a bit more. Who were they really? And how did a group like this end up with the power to do, well, this?
Yeah, their story is a classic fall from grace, almost. They started out as this highly respected group of intellectuals and thinkers, scientists, but somewhere along the line, they veered into what the source bluntly calls playing God. Their work with Ergo and the elixir stopped being just about cures. They started trying to fundamentally alter human life, mess with soul's resurrection, abuse, chasing immortality. And the results were often, tragic or just monstrous. But the key thing, again, is their connection to power.
Right, the old families, the council.
Deeply entangled. This wasn't some secret project hidden from the rulers. It seems like it was sanctioned, maybe even driven by Krat's elite. It was part of the system.
That connection definitely explains the scale and the cover-up later. Okay, let's circle back to the disease itself, the thing that kickstarted everything,
Yeah.
petrification. We know ergo exposure caused it, this crystallization of the soul leading to death. So why? Why on earth would the alchemist's solution be to use more ergo? Even purified ergo. Seems paradoxical.
It is paradoxical, and that's the core of the tragedy. Exposure to ergo spores triggered it, yes, this awful crystallization, then death. So the question is stark. If ergo causes it, why use more ergo the elixir as a cure? When you frame it like that, it becomes incredibly clear how flawed their whole approach was. It seems they believed refining it would isolate its beneficial properties, maybe, but whatever the reasoning, it backfired spectacularly.
Yeah.
It didn't just fail to cure, it actively worsened the crisis. It directly created those carcass entities. The cure literally became a worse version of the disease.
Amplifying the problem they were trying to solve. Just like,
God's
wow. So with all these failures, the monsters, the flawed cure, what were the final consequences for Krat as a whole?
Utter containment. In the aftermath, it wasn't just Zielter. Entire zones, all the related infrastructure, labs, access tunnels, they were sealed off completely. And this wasn't like an accident or just the result of decay. The source points to it being a deliberate act. The old families, the city council, they walled it off. Partly to contain the ongoing threat, sure, but maybe even more importantly, to hide the whole horrifying scandal from the outside world. Krat became this isolated, sealed tragedy.
And there's that extra layer too, right? Even with the city physically isolated, these other external groups, these immortal factions, someone called Paracelsus or Giangio, they were still manipulating things from outside.
Yeah, that's another chilling detail from the wider lore. The isolation wasn't total protection. Krat's tragedy was still being influenced, maybe even exploited, by powerful forces beyond its sealed borders. It wasn't truly left alone, even in its quarantine.
Okay, so we've gone deep into Krat's frozen underbelly. Looking back at all this, what's the biggest takeaway for you? It's such a grim story, ambition gone wrong, desperate cover-ups, a cure creating monsters.
For me, what really stands out is, yes, the playing God aspect is huge, obviously, but it's also the profound irony. Krat was a city built on and incredibly proud of its technological advancement, especially with puppets and ergo. And then its very foundation, ergo, becomes the source of its absolute ruin. It's less just about scientific ethics and more about this almost technological hubris, believing you can control forces you don't fully understand.
That's a powerful point. It makes this deep dive feel less like just exploring game lore and more like, well, a warning. It really makes you think, doesn't it?
Yeah.
How many advancements in our own world, maybe built on shaky ethical ground, could be hiding similar stories? How many solutions might be inadvertently creating new problems? It forces you to ask, what silent carcass creatures might we be creating right now without even realizing it?